Welcome to Chile and the Atacama Desert, where it's blowing a gale and it's freezing cold, and I've come all this way to test drive this, the new Audi Q8, and it's effectively a sporty version of the Q7. Now before we get into the review, what I want you to do is make sure you subscribe to this channel, and if you're already subscribed, please hit the bell icon to turn your notifications on, because if you don't have your notifications on, you won't be alerted when we make a new upload and you'll miss out on all our great content. Now I'm going to start off by talking around this car's design, because it's very different than the Q7. They just haven't done a few tweaks here and there. It's got whole new bodywork. First thing to notice is this grille. So this is Audi's new 8-sided grille, and you're going to be seeing this style on future Audis, but it premieres here on this Q8, and yeah, it certainly stands out. And they've done this thing where they've given it a mask, so the grille actually blends into the lights to give it like a mask, like a real face. And they've actually made the lights slightly differently. They put the light unit here in the top, and the high beam is below it, and it looks like it's kind of blanked out. So the effect is to give you like this really slim headlight design, which looks pretty cool. Now the front nose of the car is lower than the Q7, so too is the bonnet, and the car is slightly shorter, but it's lower and it's slightly wider. So down at the side, you've got a slightly wider track. Also, you've got blistered wheel arches, and as standard, this car rides on 20-inch alloy wheels to make it stand out. This one, though, is on 22s. Now, we'll see what that does to the ride quality a bit later in the video. Something else I want to show you is this. Look, I'm going to open the door, and you'll see something unusual. The door is frameless. Look, you just have the window there. That's very unusual for an SUV, and it looks pretty cool. Now, as I was saying, the roofline is lower than the Q7, not just by a bit, it's that much lower, which is quite significant. And once again, later in the video, we'll see what that has done for the space in the back seat. One standout feature is this though. Look at the rear haunches. You've got these blistered wheel arches, and those are mimicking those that you had on the short wheelbase Quattro from the 80s. And there's another thing that mimics the Quattro from the 80s. Look, this light bar at the back with this black panel. I mean, that light bar is very interesting, and I'll show you a little clip of that because it does a little dance when you turn the lights on and off. Other things to note are you've got this rakish tailgate there, you've got a roof spoiler, and shame of shames, look. Audi has given the car fake exhaust pipes. They lead to nowhere, they're just false. I don't know why they're doing it. Audi has followed Mercedes down the dark path of fake exhaust pipes. Why?
I can't fault Audi for the rest of the design though. You see, unlike the Dowdy Q7, the Q8 has plenty of presence. Not convinced? Then let me show you something.
Against this vast backdrop, the Q8 doesn't actually look all that large, but believe me, in real life it is, as I'll illustrate now by bringing in one of Audi's more normal sized SUVs. So here's a Q3, and you'll see then, look just how large and imposing that Q8 is. It's definitely going to stand out on the road.
This particular Q8 is in the S-Line trim, which is actually the entry-level point in the UK. That means plenty of standard kit, but a more expensive starting price.
The new Q8 will start from around £65,000 when it goes on sale, which makes it about £13,000 more expensive than the Q7. Now, if you go to carwow.com, you can see how much you can save on a new car. However, if you're not thinking about buying a car yourself, but you know of someone who is, click on the pop-out banner in the top right-hand corner of the screen, or on the link below the video to refer a friend to CarWow. If they buy a car through us and you've recommended them, we'll give you a £50 Amazon gift card.
Speaking of money, the inside of the Q8 feels very expensive, with a minimalist yet high-tech design.
This interior just follows on from that of the A8 and the A6. It's got its own unique vent design, but it's still the similar kind of thing with this big slab and the two central screens there, which, if I'm honest, I'm not the biggest fan of. They look nice and are easy to use while you're stationary, but a bit harder to do while you're driving. And yeah, you control like this stuff like the ventilation down here, like the infotainment up here. Thankfully, you've got the virtual cockpit there, so you can control most things through that, and it's right in your eye line pretty much, so you don't have to take your eyes off the road. Quality is good as ever with an Audi. Solid, firm, feels expensive. I like the seats in this one, so you get sport seats as standard. This one has the super sport seats, which are really nice, they're quilted. So yeah, suitably posh, what you'd expect really.
From launch, you can get the Q8 with either a 3-litre V6 turbo petrol or the 3-litre V6 diesel in this car. It has 286 horsepower and is very punchy, though it can be a bit noisy when you accelerate hard. The 8-speed automatic gearbox isn't the fastest to respond either, though it is nice and smooth. But what about the rest of the driving experience?
Well, the chassis is pretty much the same as the Q7. However, it's got a more sporty suspension setup, so it's a bit more dynamic to drive. Can I feel that? Maybe a little bit. I can maybe feel it a little bit. Now in the UK, as standard, the car gets air suspension, and it's the Air Sport suspension, so it's a bit firmer than the air suspension you get on the Q7, but it still rides over bumps really well. I've got it in comfort mode at the moment, but you can switch it into dynamic. In fact, there's loads of different modes. There's off-road mode, which will jack the car up by 50 millimeters over the normal height. There's an all-road mode, which is kind of a little bit higher than normal. Then there's a normal ride height, which you can use in comfort or auto. And then if you go in dynamic mode, you can actually lower the ride height by 40 millimeters below standard. So there's a range of 90 millimeters that you can change the ride height. In terms of the driving, well, this one has the dynamic rear wheel steering. So when you're going fast, the rear wheels go in the same direction as the fronts, so you've got a bit more stability. When you're going slowly though, they go in the opposite direction, so the car is quite manoeuvrable. It's got the same turning circle pretty much as something like an A3, which is quite impressive considering how huge this thing does feel. One thing I have noticed is that when you're travelling at high speed, you get a bit of wind whistle from this area and the large door mirrors. It's not too much of a problem, but you can just pick it up a bit, because otherwise this car is really, really quiet. And as standard, you get a double glazed windscreen, and that helps keep the noise out. On the whole though, yeah, I think this car is pretty blooming relaxing to travel in. You can get the Q8 with the same autonomous driving tech you get on all the other latest Audis. So yeah, I'll do that thing where it will monitor the road ahead, keep you a safe distance from the car in front. It'll steer to keep you in lane, though it'll eventually disengage if you keep your hands off the wheel for too long. But if you're to pass out behind the wheel and you're totally unresponsive, then it will actually bring the car to a halt in lane. It won't just like switch off and leave you to fend for yourself. And if you don't respond at all, it will automatically stop the car and call the emergency services. Look, it's getting a bit cross now that I'm not actually holding the steering wheel. Still steering though, still steering. Emergency assist SOS, there we go, and it's yanking, it's braking the car to try and shock me. No, it's lost its marbles, it's got very cross with me, and it was about to call the emergency services then. And the car in front of us is wondering why we've dropped back so far. We're testing out the latest kit. We need to do this. Journalism, it's journalism, definitely. Pretty soon I think being a motoring journalist isn't going to be anything to do with talking about the steering feel, what the car handles like, the engine performance. It'll be about how you operate the autonomous tech. That's what it'll be. Maybe talk about how quiet it is as well and the comfort, but yeah, driving dynamics, people won't care about. But if you think about how people drive anyway nowadays, most of the time you're on the motorway or you're in traffic, you don't get to fully explore a car's handling capabilities, do you?
But what would the Q8 be like on the rare occurrence that you had an open stretch of interesting road ahead of you? Say, such as if you were in a desert in Chile.
So we've come to quite a twisty section of the road, so I'm going to whack the car into dynamic. Everything's in its sportiest setting. The suspension has gone firmer, steering wheel has got a bit more weight added to it. We're in the sports mode for the gearbox, sharper throttle response. I mean, this scenery is incredible. This road's like our own private racetrack. There's no one else on it. And the road's getting a little bit slippy now. Good job you got permanent quattro all-wheel drive. So that sends 40% of the power to the front, 60% to the rear as standard, but obviously it can move the power distribution depending on where you need most grip.
Despite the conditions, the Q8 handles pretty well. Though, while it's supposed to be a coupe-like SUV, it's still no sports car.
I should point out as well, this is not a light car. It weighs over 2 tons. It's slightly heavier than the Q7. The reason for that is that, well, it's got bigger alloy wheels. You've got the mild hybrid system on it as well. The way it works is that it'll basically allow the car to coast when you're going downhill or you're at high speeds and you don't actually need any performance from the engine, so it just cuts it to help save fuel. It's funny to think though that you're trying to save fuel by adding weight to the car with a mild hybrid system, because obviously one of the biggest problems which reduces your fuel efficiency is increased weight.
Apparently, all this means the diesel Q8 should be able to do around 40 miles per gallon, in case you're wondering. And in case you are also wondering about what it's like for rear passengers, I'll test it out in the back for you now.
This is the real acid test for this car, because you might imagine that Audi could ruin the practicality by making the roofline much lower than the Q7. But as you can see, look, loads and loads of space. It's really roomy and comfy back here. It's not like a BMW X6 where you feel all like hemmed in and uncomfortable. It's luxurious. And this car has the slidable seats. They're an option, but you can slide them forward if you really want to increase the boot space. It's already 600 litres, but if you have your seat forward, you can increase it to about 680 litres. Yeah. And of course, look, it has a reclining function as well. I'll just pop this down. Just chill out, enjoy the ride. So then, what's my final verdict on the new Audi Q8? Well, yeah, it's a nice thing to drive. It's very much like a Q7, unsurprisingly, but with a slightly sportier edge. However, I think it's perfect for those people who would like a Q7, but just find it a little bit too bland to look at. This isn't. It really stands out. If you enjoyed this video, I really want you to hit the like button. Also, write some comments in the box below to let us know what you thought about this video and the car as well. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you subscribe, hit the bell icon to turn your notifications on so you're alerted if we make a new upload. Also, you can watch some other videos down below. And if you click over there, you can actually refer a friend to CarWow. Now, if they go on to buy a car through CarWow, they could save on average £3,600. And if you referred them and they buy a car, we'll give you a £50 Amazon gift card.